Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 10-2, Unbiased and Biased Samples. For this lesson, we will continue to address the question, how do you know which type of graph to use when displaying data? And we were going to look at the vocabulary, unbiased sample. So an unbiased sample is when it's not biased. So this is the opposite. The prefix un makes it the opposite, so it's not biased. Unbiased sample, simple random sample, systematic random sample, biased sample, convenience sample, voluntary response sample. As you can see, we are looking at all different types of samples. Real world link, entertainment. A TV programming manager wants to conduct a survey to determine which reality television show is the favorite of viewers in a certain viewing area. He is considering the 3 samples shown. Draw an X through the 2 samples that would not fairly represent all of the people in the viewing area. So our 3 viewing samples are sample 1, 100 people that are trying out for a reality show. Sample 2, 100 students at your middle school. Sample 3, every 100th person at a shopping mall. So for example, let's look at example 2. 100 students at your middle school. Do you think 100 students here at our school would be able to give a good representation of our town? I don't think so, right? So that would not be enough. So now we're between sample 1 and 2. Sample 1, 100 people that are trying out for a reality TV show. Now, if 100 people are trying out for a show, let's say like Survivor or one of those types of shows, these people are already going to be biased towards a particular kind of show. They already have determined that they like that one particular kind of show. So they have a fixed answer. So that would not work as well. You know what would work? Sample 3. Every 100th person at a shopping mall. This is completely random, and you might get all kinds of demographic, ethnicities, age, likes and dislikes for every 100 person that you find at a shopping mall. So this would be the best sample of the town. Explain why the 2 samples that you crossed out do not fairly represent all of the people in the viewing area. So you just heard my explanation. You can use some of my words, or you can go ahead and write your own explanation. Okay, so key to the lesson right here. This is our main point. Biased and unbiased samples. To get valid results, a sample must be chosen very carefully. Remember that when we talk about a sample, it's just a fraction of the population. An unbiased sample is selected so that it accurately represents the entire population. 2 ways to pick an unbiased sample are listed below. So unbiased means that they're not going to have any kind of prefixed answers. You want it to be completely at random. So unbiased samples. Type: simple random sample. Description: each item or person in the population is as likely to be chosen as any other. So equal outcomes. An example would be each student's name is written on a piece of paper. The names are placed in a bowl and names are picked without looking. This would be completely random, right? So this is a simple random sample. A systematic random sample. Description: the items or people are selected according to a specific time or item interval. So we have selected a specific time or even item interval, the order of the items. For example, every 20th person is chosen from an alphabetical list of all students attending a school. This would still make it random because we don't know who those people are going to be until we actually see the list and the number of people and their names, correct? So now we know that a random sample is unbiased, right? But what is a bias? In a biased sample, 1 or more parts of the population are favored over others. 2 ways to pick a biased sample are listed below. So favored or fixed already, okay? So biased samples. Type: Convenience sample. A convenience sample. A convenience sample consists of members of a population that are easily accessed. An example: to represent all the students attending a school, the principal surveys the students in one math class. So convenient. It's so much easier, right? Convenient to go to one math class to just choose a handful of students. So, but that's kind of biased because all the students are going to be approximately the same age, they're going to have the same teacher, they'll have a lot of similarities, and it's not really going to be a good reflection of the whole school. Voluntary response sample. This could also be biased. A voluntary response sample involves only those who want to participate in the sampling. So, and this often happens with elections. Students at a school who wish to express their opinions complete an online survey. So only those that want to put in the time and energy to express their opinions are the ones that are going to share the survey. So for these surveys, you won't really get a sample of everyone in the school. You'll only get the ones that are interested in either complaining or sharing a thought or a concern. The same thing happens with voting. In voting, the voluntary response sample, often voters are elderly, retired people who have time to go out to the voting booth, and that's why we get a biased sample. Okay, now let's take a look at the first examples as we understand what biased and unbiased samples are. Determine whether the conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. Conclusion is valid, meaning after surveying and studying, well, are we going to have a valid sample? A random sample of students at a middle school shows that 10 students prefer listening to rock, 15 students prefer listening to hip hop, and 25 students prefer no music while they exercise. It can be concluded that half the students prefer no music while they exercise. Half the students. Well, let's just see. We have 10 students prefer listening to rock. 15 students prefer listening to hip hop, and 25 students prefer no music while they exercise. This is a simple random sample, so the sample is unbiased and the conclusion is valid. So it is valid, and think about it. We're saying that half the students, 25 don't like music, while 10 and 15, which is another 25, listen to specific kinds of music. And it's a random sample. We just chose anybody. It says here a random sample of students at a middle school shows that. So they probably just walked around the lunchroom and asked students, 50 different students, to answer. Example 2. Determine whether each conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. Every 10th person who walks into a department store, so this is completely random right here, right guys, is surveyed to determine his or her music preference. Out of 150 customers, 70 stated that they prefer rock music. The manager concludes that about half of the customers prefer rock music. About, 70, if you double 70, you get 140. That's almost 150, isn't it? So 70 is about half. 75 would be exactly half. Since the population is every 10th customer of a department store, the sample is an unbiased systematic random sample. The conclusion is valid. Example 3. Okay, and feel free to draw any of this if you want to just go ahead and practice it a little bit more on your own, or you want notes. The customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. The results are shown in the graph. The store manager concludes that most people prefer to listen to music in their leisure time. So the customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. Only the customers within that store. So we have 9% other. What is this? About 85% listening to music and playing sports, right? The customer of a music store probably like to listen to music. That's true. That's why they're in a store in their leisure time. The sample is biased. Convenience sample, the sample is biased. Convenience sample, since all of the people surveyed are in one specific location, the conclusion is not valid. If we wanted to make this a little bit, or if we wanted to make it unbiased, I would say survey the people in a grocery store. They're there to buy food, and some of them might listen to music. You would get a more random sample. Okay, if you think you got it, let's try this one together. After I read it, pause and try it on your own. Otherwise, stay on, keep playing through, and listen to the answer. A radio station asks its listeners to indicate their preference for one of two candidates in an upcoming election. 72% of the listeners who responded prefer candidate A. So the radio station announced that candidate A would win the election. Is the conclusion valid? Justify your answer. This would be a voluntary response sample because they're asking the listeners to call in, right? One of two candidates in the upcoming election. 72% of the listeners who responded preferred candidate A. So the ones who responded, the ones who actually picked up the phone and decided to call in to give their answer. Now, we don't know. This is a volunteer response answer. Maybe the people that, depending on the time of the day, maybe it was the radio show was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon when everyone's working, and maybe only the retired people or stay-at-home mothers or fathers were the ones that volunteered to answer. So is this a bias or unbiased? Because it's a volunteer response answer, it is a biased response. It is biased. You can't really determine what a population would like based on this. Use sampling to predict. So we can use a lot of these samplings that we collect to predict future outcomes. A valid sampling method uses unbiased samples. Okay, if a sampling method is valid, you can make generalizations about the populations or future events and so on, or future trends. Finally, example 4. A store sells 3 types of pants: jeans, capris, and cargos. Okay, so we have 3 types. 1, 2, 3. The store workers surveyed 50 customers at random about their favorite types of pants. The surveyed responses are indicated at the right. If 450 pairs of pants are ordered, how many should be jeans? So this will give us a sample. And again, this is a targeted audience that they're surveying. It's the customers that come to that specific store, so it would be good to ask them. So this is a convenience sample, but this will help us determine what their inventory should look like, all based on what they like. So 25 customers said jeans. Okay, jeans is their favorite. Capris for 15. Cargos is 4, so we have 50 right there. First, determine whether the sample method is valid. To me, this sounds like a systematic random sample or even a convenience sample, but I see it more as an unbiased sample. Not because if it's convenient, sometimes it can be biased, but if it's systematic, it is unbiased. And I say it's systematic because they're choosing from a list of 3 types of jeans, so the outcomes are predetermined, okay, or fixed. At the store, they want to target the best audiences, their own customers, okay, and they get to choose from 3. So first, determine whether the method is valid. The sample is a simple random sample since customers were randomly selected as they came in. Thus, the sample method is valid. Yes. 25 out of 50, or 50% of the customers prefer jeans. So find 50% of 450. So 225, yeah. So what you do is you multiply this number times 0.5, right? Because you cannot multiply percents, but you can multiply the decimal version of the percent. And there it is. 0.5 times 450 is 225. So about 225 pairs of jeans should be ordered. That should be about what we will need. And as always, boys and girls, here is the guided practice. Take a look through it. Make sure that you're able to read through the question. If you're not sure on how to do it, go back to example 4 on the video, okay? Or go back to examples 1 to 3 if you don't know how to do number 2. And that's it for today. See you in class, everyone.